Hello and welcome back to the Apprentice One-to-One podcast. It's been a bit of a while, but we're here with an exciting episode. As usual, I've got Craig with me. So how are you doing, Craig?
Yeah, good, thank you. I think we were just saying when it's been so long we forgot what time we normally do it, which is not good. We need to get better and being back. But no, it's good. Life's busy, work's busy. Obviously, exciting ventures in your A121 journey, which we're meeting next week around. And yeah, it's good. Life is good. What about yourself?
All good, mate. I'm looking forward to next week and also terrified by it at the same time, but we'll come back to that later on. We've got our guest this week, who is Matt Telford, and he's been on the podcast a few times before. How are you doing, Matt?
I'm doing well. I'm doing really well, Mark. Thank you. And again, like Greg says, really exciting stuff you're doing next week. I had wanted to come along, but we're just too busy at work at the minute. So um, I think you've got loads of stuff going on, and it's a really, really exciting venture.
Yes, yeah, we do. It's a shame you're not going to be able to get up here, but absolutely, work comes first, especially with Christmas on the horizon, as we were talking about pre-recording. We all need to be saving up those pennies ready for that little expensive period we've got. But Matt, how have you been in the day job? Because I think last time we spoke, you were still on your training journey. I think you were in the process of doing your NVQ and stuff, weren't you?
Yeah. Um, I can't remember exactly what it was we said last time, but yeah, I think last time I was somewhere through doing the level three theory at college, and I was also doing it like separately on a Sunday. So I went to a company in Derby to do the level three alongside the apprenticeship because I appreciate that colleges with sort of 18-year-olds and so on can stretch it out over the 2 years, but I really, really wanted to just get the theory side done. And I was working on my NVQ, and I managed to get two or three really good jobs where I kind of had everything from the planning, containment installation, all the installation of all the circuits, a couple of circuit boards, distribution boards, loads of circuits on there, and all the testing and verification on it. Um, so, contrary to common belief, you can do an NVQ in a few jobs. You don't have to do millions of jobs and spend months and months and months doing it. If you can get the right work, you can pick up pretty much all the evidence you need. And then with the day job, there were little faults that were coming along to do some fault finding. And again, some of the things you have to think outside the box about what a fault is as to how to find it. So yeah, I think that was the trickiest bit was the fault find bit. Um, but it is sometimes just thinking about what it was. So yeah, so since then, since we've last spoke, I managed to do my portfolio. I managed to do my level three, and I have done my AM2 and passed that one first time, which I'm quite pleased with.
That is a very good achievement getting through first time because there's quite a high failure rate on the AM2, as we all know on this call. Just to go back to your MVQ, Matt, quickly if we can, because I've had a couple of questions actually that I've called out for on Instagram pre coming to the recording. So there's lots of people in your position who are following along
Mhm.
through that, and there's saying similar sort of things like it's getting the opportunity for the work experience is one of the big barriers, but then also kind of the evidence people need to collect, even simple stuff about able to get the pictures and things with people helping them take the pictures. So what was your process with that? Were you asking your employer to take them? Were you setting up a video camera, just recording what you were doing? If you've only got
Uh,
three jobs and you're kind of working as well, it's
yeah,
how do you organize that?
I think you do. That's the first thing is you do have to be organised. And I ended up, um, I was sort of trawling through Marketplace and eBay and all the rest of it, and picking up like second-hand action cams and a really old camcorder, the proper old sort of video 8 camcorders and things. But it ended up actually what I did most of the time was I got a really basic tripod. I think they sell them on like people's TikTok shops and stuff. It's folds down to about a foot. The bottom comes out and then it goes up 6 foot high and it will hold an iPhone.
Hmm.
So I would have that in my tote box every day with me. I'd always have that in the background. So if I had anything that was likely to be useful for portfolio, I'd just whip that out, put it up, put the phone on record, and record and then sit for an hour or two in the evening. And this is the other bit you have to then be willing to do is maybe spend a bit of time in the evening getting that video and screen grabbing the bits that are useful for your portfolio. Because it depends, I think, on people's providers and people's portfolio systems as to whether they will accept videos or just stills, or a mix of both. And mine really wanted just stills. They wanted them to be put in the reports. So I just trawl through stuff, screen grab it, stick it in, write a little bit about what I was doing, and so on and so on. And yeah, it's just getting those jobs. So I was lucky being an apprentice full time in there, and it limits the amount of evidence you need. I think you might be hearing from people with the experienced worker route. You have to have more of each evidence for each unit, which I think is a little bit naughty. I would say if you've got to have some evidence for one scheme, surely it should be the same for everything, really.
I guess, Craig, does that come back to the lecturers in the classroom signing some of the apprentices off, as well as just sort of the employers and the assessor, or is it just a different process for a different route?
Different qualifications have different requirements because they need they're aimed at different people, right? So experienced worker, somebody might have 30 years experience in the game, but not a single formal qualification to their name, for example. So the skill scan or the evidence that you need to collate throughout that process is different to somebody who's got a bundle of certificates. Whether it should be or whether it shouldn't be, the difference is that certificates are a way of evidence and that somebody has undertaken an element of education, good, bad, or indifferent, everybody's argument to have, but it doesn't state the fact of a certificate as evidence, and NVQs are about evidence, and you need to put your evidence in place to show that you meet the criteria in a professional way. And you can shape that to anything you want. Come away from NVQs. EEL's level 2 qualification in electrical is different to the level 2 City and Guilds qualification. All qualifications have to meet a national occupational standard, which is like a central framework and a spine. How they meet it, what units they do to achieve it, how they get there is different. And within NVQs, it's a similar process. So City and Guilds will give an assessor's marking guide and it will say, must evidence 3 types of containment, for argument's sake. Here's the methods in which they can evidence it: witness statements, pictures, photographs, etc., etc. There'll be 6 or 7 different ways in which they could potentially provide that evidence. And it is then up to the college or the assessors or the learner even how that evidence then gets presented. But ultimately, if you can document you've met the criteria, you've met the criteria. And it's so I would challenge anybody that if their assessor says, I only want pictures, for example, maybe ask them why. If your book tells you can do other methods and there's a method that suits you better, ask them the question why. I'm not saying be argumentative or be hard work, but why can I only send pictures? It says here I can have a witness statement, or it says here I can have, you watching me. I've seen people be observed doing observations on teams. I've seen people send videos. I've seen people be assessed physically on site. Like, there's a range of assessment methods. It's been a long time, but the last time I looked, it didn't say you must submit this piece of evidence to meet this criteria. You have an option as to how you evidence that.
Yeah, I guess with the people in different situations, there are going to be different requirements for experienced worker assessment, just because of the skills scan, I suppose, and filling in those spots in knowledge and bits and pieces like that. Have you found that when you was in the college, Craig, that getting learners to actually understand they need to do their NVQs and putting the effort in, like Matt's just described, of taking the pictures, spending time at home, filling a logbook in, be it a printed out one? That's what Nathan did. He preferred that. He wanted a physical copy that he could stick pictures in and write next to him by hand, because that was what he preferred. Or is it a case of, they're just, because I get this question a lot, people miles behind with their portfolios all the time. So did you see that as a problem?
It is a problem. Did I see it as a problem? Not necessarily, because to me, I live by a mantra, and I think this goes all the way up past apprentices to even when I look at like level 4 design courses. There are hundreds of, not thousands of people out there that have passed the exam but never get around to submitting the project for their design course. It's the same with apprentices and NVQs and adult learners, I very much still take the mantra of, if you are motivated enough, you will do it. And if you're not, then that probably tells you it's not the career for you. And I would say that to students, I would say that to people at the time. I would say, look, I don't care who you are, what you do outside of this room, but if you don't want to be here, that's fine. Just don't waste anybody's time. If you do, then this is what's expected of you if you want to be here. Because how many of us in this conversation or people listening go, I've never had to get up at 4 a.m. I've never had to work a night shift. Or I've never had to be on site and it's 5 o'clock on Friday and I'm down in Wales or something, but something's broken and you've got to get the power back on. Like, so if you can't even fill an NVQ portfolio, and I'm sorry, in my opinion, this isn't the trade or the industry for you. And I used to reiterate that quite a lot. So if people didn't want to do it, they didn't do it. They just
tough love, mate. That's what that is. Like, it's tough love. And you've been doing that, Matt, because we were just talking about that pre-recording, how you've not been home from work that long. And, you know, you have been putting the hours in with your employer and then afterwards doing your portfolio and stuff. And that is the kind of extent you've got to go to, isn't it? If you're determined enough to get through when you're retraining. I know you've been on an apprenticeship more than retraining, but you've had a bit of a blend there along the way.
Yeah. And I think I'd sort of reiterate the stuff Craig says about experience, and, you know, having discussed with you all before about my background as an assessor, you know, dealing with students that have been on an apprenticeship for 3 or 4 years and don't have any off the job hours, don't have any NVQ portfolio. I was absolutely adamant that wasn't going to be me. So I'd make sure that even at work, I'd be just making little notes on my phone, what I was doing each day, so that I could go home and put off the job hours in. You know, so I'd had that nailed within the first 6 months. I had pretty much all my off the job hours that I needed. So it is just a case of being willing to put that little bit of time in.
Yeah, and I guess that's the same moving on to the AM2 process as well, because there's such a lot of people who don't get that first time. And Nathan won't mind me saying that he didn't. He failed his first time and had to go back and do a couple of little bits as a second time pass. And I think there's lots end up in that position. They do try and prepare. I know he did, and he just found the pressure of the thing a little bit much to bear. I think it got on top of him. And I don't think that's unusual. But there are lots of other people who were sent, I think, anyway, for their AM2s before they're ready. So how did you make sure you're ready?
I did what I do with a lot of things, and I wanted to be prepared. I'm quite a big believer in the 7 P's, proper preparation prevents piss poor performance. And I literally did what I could do to find any information about what it was likely to be in the sort of AM2 setup. And I'm lucky enough to have enough space here that I built myself, and then put assessment rig in my garage. And it had, when I went for the AM2, I was shocked. It was literally the same. So it was kind of like I was at home. So I would then, on weekends, and Andrew, my wife, was quite happy with this, that in the weeks leading up to it, I would be down there Saturday and Sunday with a stopwatch, and I'd time myself on putting in the ring, or time myself on the lighting, or time myself on the containments. And, you know, I've had a pipe bender for ages. I picked one up cheap off the internet. So I bought myself, and Adam bought me a few bits, some couple of lengths of steel tubing. So I'd have E-fix on in the corner, I'd have the bender out, I'd be measuring up. And it's quite easy to find some of the specs online, but I don't believe in just doing that one thing. So I would set blocks off the wall and practice different sets rather than just a set. So, you know, by the end of it, I'd been setting back from like 20 mil, 30 mil, 50 mil, 70 mil, 80 mil, having 3 boxes a metre apart, 300 mil apart, having that set back in. So it was quite happy that when I got there, the only thing I hadn't been able to practice much of was things like the fault finding. But again, you know, there's little ways you can do that. Like excess training, I've got a few ways where they do it. And I reckon you can learn how to find all your fault finding with 2 bits of twin and earth and 3 Wagos, pretty much. And you can rig that up to work out what readings you'll get for all the different faults. So yeah, practice is what I'd say to anybody.
That's interesting, and I don't disagree with that. Like getting set up in your own garage if you've got the space and go through your practicing. I always suggest people review the net website to read the specification and go through all the rest of it. I think they've got a test and inspection app as well that Sparky Ninja helped them with for the fault finding aspect. So there's all this stuff you can do for sort of self-responsibility, if you like. Because once the assessor, employer, and your trainer have said you're capable of doing it, the rest is really in your own hands. Is there anything you've got on that, Craig?
Just going back a couple of points was, why do people find it a negative when they don't get through the first time? Because I don't know how many things I've failed on installations since my AM2, never mind getting into the AM2. So it's, at what point do you go, okay, it's just another install, it's just another learning curve, it's just something else I come back and I take? This whole stigma around, what does it mean you can't be a spark? Does it mean you can't do the job? Like, we don't hold the same stigma if you don't pass your driving test first time. So I just think that, like, I think more people learn from it. And I think the biggest part of the AM2 that catches people out is the pressure, essentially. They don't get, because I'm going to say this as an unpopular opinion, but not trying to discredit anything. The AM2 itself is not the trickiest thing to do. Most apprentices will probably have done far more complex installations when they've been in their apprenticeship, actually on site with the companies they work for. What is hard about it is you're put into a tin can effectively, and you're put into a 2x4 bay, and you know somebody's watching you, and that's the challenge. You have to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I used to hate it when I was teaching. You'd walk into a classroom on the first day, there's 20 people looking at you like you should know everything, and you don't. And almost the best thing that could happen was the first question you don't have the answer to made it all a bit more human. Because once you'd failed. Oh, how do you do this? Oh, I don't know. Let me find out. Like, we've lost that as a society, I think. And it's, yeah, we all want to pass first time, but be prepared you might not. And if you don't, learn from it and then do it the next time, because you've got 20, 30, 40, 50 years of doing this. You're going to find things you don't get and you don't understand. Like, if I tried to pick any tool up now, I wouldn't know what I was doing. So it's just part and parcel of where you go. But the resources, people don't use a net checklist enough in my eyes, because essentially it tells you everything that's in your AM2 on that checklist. It's literally telling you what it's going to ask you to install when you do your AM2, where you say whether you're confident or you're not. And you need to look at that and go, I'm actually not confident with SY, because I don't know about you guys, but I haven't landed an SY properly in I don't know how many years, because we just don't anymore. When do you ever sit and twist the blades and put them between the washers? And the amount of people I used to see go, yeah, I've glanded these, and they bring out an SWA gland. They say I haven't done like the actual SY gland. And you go, well, if you're not okay with it, you have to just say you're not okay, and you have to make sure you practice it. And if you're working for a company and they've got any decent wholesaler, I would say they will give you off cuts of cable or bits they're getting rid of or whatever, so that you can sit and practice these, because ultimately you've got to do that. And the only other thing I ever tell people, which is using the NET checklist, plan your time. So you get to have to be careful, because it might have changed, but last time I was aware, you could stop your stopwatch and have a break when you felt you were comfortable or not during your assessment build anyway. So I would say to people, well, go and plan that in the first 2 hours you're going to have, I don't know, pulled the lighting circuit and then wire the ring, and then give yourself a 5-minute break. Then come back from that and then say, right, for the next 2 hours, I'm going to have done the armored cable, and I'm going to have done the heat pump or whatever it is that they've got on there now. I don't know. And just, instead of looking at an 8-hour build and standing there and going, oh, what do I do? Have a plan as to how you're going to attack it. Break it into sections, break it into segments, so that you can talk about it confidently, address it, and attack the situation. And the spec that is there is helpful and it's key. The only thing I would say, go and learn your cable numbers. because I don't know if it's still like this now, Matt, but when I done mine, it would just say 69419Y or whatever on the spec, and you have to be happy that you know that you're going for twinning CPC, or I've probably got the code wrong, but just, for argument's sake. So getting used to that so that you're not going, oh, what am I looking for? And just try and plan it out. Plan your bay, because they tell you what's going to be in your bay. Because I think for a lot of people, if they pass the bay, it gives them that sort of confidence boost to then carry on with the next bits.
Some golden tips in there, Craig, that I would echo. And I'm gonna get Nathan to come and record. He's terrible at talking on stuff like this. He absolutely hates it. And you've both met him, so you know this is true. But I'm gonna get him to do it because he's probably got a powerful message of his own to share in there. And I know from chatting with him, it was very much the pressure of it. He struggled in actually filling his test sheet, and I think he got that much in a befuddle. He put the right numbers, but in all the wrong boxes. And it's just that sheer, as you've just described, Craig, overwhelming pressure he felt from being in that tin box environment. He actually did his install absolutely fine. I think he ran out of time on, is it the heating controls or something? So he had to go back and do that and fill his test sheet in again, basically. And I don't think that's uncommon. I think lots and lots of people end up in that headspace. And I guess the way around it is to be as thoroughly prepared as you were, Matt, or as you've just said, Craig, not to fear if you do make those mistakes, and going back and sorting out the little bits that you might get wrong. Yes, it costs you money. Nathan had to pay again because you only get, I believe, one free hit at it. We certainly paid the next time round. So there is that aspect. And if you can avoid the failure, then it's always better to do that. But don't be ashamed of it and don't fear it.
No, because some of it, like, I can't remember what one they put in, but an S plan or a Y plan heating system, I couldn't tell you the last time I'd ever done one in that configuration, but it's still part of the AM2. And it's like, for me, if I'm honest, the AM2 needs to catch up with a bit more of what's going on in industry out there personally. From my own point of view, I respect the people there and they do a great job, and education never changes quickly. But I think it needs to come more in line with some of the sort of day-to-day installs that apprentices are seeing. Like the whole domestic apprenticeship, which has come about now, it's great for one thing, not for another. I get people have mixed views, but that's a step in the way of it's a bit more modern compared to some of the other apprenticeships that are probably the same from when we done them, Mark, compared to what Matt's just gone through now. And the industry has certainly changed in that time. So you would want some of that to catch up a little bit, I think.
Yeah, so Matt, just going back to that, without giving the secrets away of the AM2, because I know they guard it very carefully, and NET get a bit upset if it's discussed in great depth. So I don't want to go upsetting them. But is it still of an older iteration of stuff, or have they tweaked it and modernized it a little bit?
I don't know. I think I did the latest version. So if you started after the 1st of January 2023 or 1st of December 2023, you do, I think, version 1.1. So I think the S plan, Craig, used to have like a solar controller in it. So they tried to bring it up to date a little bit, but now it's gone back to a standard S plan. There's a couple of other bits in there. So, I mean, again, like you said, Craig, on the net checklist, it tells you the stuff that's in there now. So you've now got an emergency light. So you need to add in an emergency lighting system. You need to do a remote stop-start on your Dole. So there's just a couple of little things in it. And actually there is now, again, I don't know how much we're allowed to say on this or not, but you do actually have a planning section now. So the first thing you do is plan. So you sit down and spend half an hour writing out what you're going to do. So I think maybe that's to try and make things easier for people. So they just have that half an hour of just decompressing in the bay and thinking about life. But other than that, I think it's just pretty much as it has been. They've added a couple of bits in there, but they've taken out like the solar controller. But I think covering points from before, I think the reason a lot of people panic is because they're told they've got to do an S-plan heating system and they've never done one. But if you can do a draw the dots or anything like that, it's literally you've got a picture here and a set of pins here, and you put these cables in those holes. That's all it is. So people panic unduly about stuff they've never done, but maybe they just need to think more about problem solving and dealing with a situation you're stuck with. Because you'll get that at work, won't you? You'll get to work and you'll be like, And I think we talked about this ages ago. You learn lighting in college, and then you take your first light down off a ceiling, and it's got 20 cables in there, and you've got to sit and work out what each one is and how it works and where it goes. If you can do that and work out what's your switch live and your permanent live and everything else, you can sort out where the heating system goes.
You just said something there, Matt, which is key, that people get scared because they're going and they've never done it. Remember that they shouldn't be going in if they've never done it. That checklist asks them to confirm they're confident and competent at doing it. The AM2 is not where you're going to learn, guys. And that's sometimes the problem is people go there thinking, oh, well, I'll just get through, or it's a sign-off test at the end of the day. People can complain about gold cards or whatever they want as much as they want. The point of that is to symbolize that you've gone through a process, and the AM2 is the last point of that process. So you shouldn't be going there like seeing something for the first time because you, your employer, and your college are ticking a box and signing it to say that you are confident and competent before you enter in that arena. And that probably is what leads to a lot of the skewed data and a lot of the misinformation, the scaremongering, is the fact that that's maybe not answered with the most integrity in the world. And that probably leads to some of the downfalls.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Matt, carry on.
Sorry, it totally, and I still talk to a lot of people getting ready for AM2, and some of the questions that they're asking time after time, you sort of think, why are you actually going for your AM2? Why are you putting yourself forward for it? Because if you're asking these questions, you're really, really not ready, and you need to go back through that net checklist and say, can I do this? Can I not? And I think it's interesting on some of the stuff, like people say they don't do containment, and depending on the AM2 you do, if you do AM2, you don't need to do containment. But if you do AM2E or AM2S, you do need to do containment, even though you've already done a portfolio with loads of containment in it. So I think some of it's a little bit kind of like, why are you asking us to do stuff again? Which arguably shouldn't be an issue because we can do it. We've demonstrated we can do it. But does it need to be a bit more streamlined? Do they need to think about maybe taking some of that sort of stuff out? Or do they need to be stricter on actually sitting down with people and signing this off? And maybe, I think I floated a suggestion on the internet a while ago about maybe there should be an AM2 prep day where you do a discussion on how it is, but you have to prove that you're AM2 ready. So it could be any part of that, you have to kind of demonstrate it. Because I think when I was doing my AM2, on the second day, we had someone else turn up to do theirs. And we were all chatting as you do in the morning. And we said, how are you doing? You ready? He went, no. I said, what do you mean? He said, they just told me I was doing it. Told me last week I'm doing my AM2. Are you ready? And he's like, no. I sort of, why are you doing it? I said, oh, well, it's a chance to have a look at it. And then, I might pass some of it and I've got a reset on it. And it is strange that people are being put forward by their employers, by their colleges, by their assessors, by themselves even, and just as if it doesn't matter. And I think it does. It's not the be all and end all. It doesn't make you a spark. It doesn't make you qualified. It just says you can do these things in a set time to a set level. But I think that's an important step in getting down the route of then now starting to learn how to do it in the real world.
Yeah, definitely. I think like you've just said there is a lot of people who end up going for their AM2s who aren't ready. And I guess getting to the reason for that would be a good thing. I suppose it's multi-angled. If employers are pushing people towards it, if the individuals are keen to have it done so they can get incremental pay rises or whatever, and the training providers, I don't know, do they get more funding when people finish their endpoint assessment? I don't think they do they? So there's
a lot of completion payment that you get when they finish.
Yeah, but the completion payment isn't more funding. It's not extra money. The apprenticeship is paid at a set fee per year, and the completion payment is just the point in time when the college can claim that section of money. It's not any different to the funding. It's not like a golden thank you or a bonus, if you like, for getting somebody through. So it's often a myth out there about colleges get paid extra for this and paid extra for that. They're not. The funding bands are set by the DFE. Colleges do not determine the funding bands. It very clearly says, if you are doing this qualification from this list for this skill set, then the government has determined that that is worth, I don't know, £9,000 a year, for example. That £9,000 a year has to then be broken up into payment payment terms effectively as you go through gateways or boundaries within your apprenticeship. So once they pass gateway one, I don't know, you'll get £2,000. I'm making stuff up here as we go, but when they pass gateway two, you get the next £8,000. When they pass gateway three, you get the next X amount. When they've finished their certificate and they've finished their AM2, you can claim and you get the final £1,500 or something. It's not like we're talking like mass amounts of money here. When you think about people go, oh, well, the apprenticeship's worth £27,000. Yes, it is. But the colleges have to run with not just the tutor that's in the classroom, not just the material that is needed for that apprentice, but for the exams department, for the security guards, for the cleaners, for the building maintenance, facilities management. All of those salaries have to be paid. And unlike private businesses, and I'm not knocking private businesses, the colleges can't make as much money as they want. If they've got 100 students at £27,000, that's how much they get paid. And they have to fit their salaries, their process, their bonus, their keeping the lights turned on, the breakdowns, the maintenance, whatever else goes with owning, let's be honest, quite big, quite old buildings and the maintenance that comes with most of them, because not many colleges are modern, purpose-built places. That does become a problem. And yes, there will be times when an electrician is worth more than, I don't know, a beauty student. But that doesn't mean that one's getting less or one's getting more than the other. The college still has to run as a business, although they're not a business. I think they're classed as a charity, so they can only make a set amount of profit with their evening courses, etc. It all has to be reinvested back into what has taken place. But you only have to look at inflation isn't taking place. It's only this week, and I don't know if Mark's getting hit with this as well, but I've been contacted by my wholesalers and getting told that copper prices are going up significantly. They'll only hold quotes for one day. And you're going, well, I can't do work off one day for the holding the price of a cable. Colleges have got to buy thousands of meters of drums. Nobody's giving it to them, apart from Mark and EFX. No one's helping them. No one's doing that. They have to pay for that. So if copper suddenly costs £200 a drum compared to £50 a drum, they're not getting any extra money. So how do they do that? And I think, unfortunately, sometimes these people get a bit of a hard ride. Yes, there is stuff that all education can be doing better, but there's also got to be realistic boundaries to some of that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've seen posts recently where FE in particular has been getting a bit of a bashing, and I think it's unfair for all the reasons you've just highlighted there, Craig. And what I see in Apprentice 121 doesn't fall out with that. I think most colleges are quite fair with the students. They're not the ones, certainly in the experience I've got, pressing them towards doing their AM2s. It does seem to be employers wanting to have staff get through their training. There's been a number of people told, if you don't get your AM2 done by XYZ date, we're going to have to review your employment. And then other people who are in a smaller volume, but the other way around from that, where they feel like they've been held back to keep them on kind of apprentice trainee salaries. So it works both ways, I suppose. And I guess that maybe is skewing the data, as you alluded to, Craig, a few minutes ago, that, probably the people who are properly prepared and go in for their AM2s, it isn't such a low failure rate of those people. It's kind of been skewed a little bit by those who are ending up doing it for the reasons you were just saying, Matt, before, where they're going in just to give it a little whirl and see how they get on and not really prepared for it whatsoever. So yeah, that's kind of how I see that. In terms of the actual AM2 itself, Matt, did you take your own tools in? Did you use their gear? Because I know Nathan had a bit of an issue with his heating terminal block, because they were using screwed terminal blocks still, and one of the screws was just spinning and wouldn't tighten. So that was one complaint he had. And he didn't take his own tools. He used what they had there, and I think he regretted that in the end.
You are allowed to take certain tools. So it's quite clear, again, in like the net guidance and stuff. You can take side cutters, croppers, pliers. They've got to be VDE rated. So I took literally everything I could take. So I had some croppers, which I used all the time. I had some side cutters, some long nose pliers, and some combi pliers. And I also had an ergo strip. And I was allowed all the pliers, but not the ergo strip.
Oh, no.
Which I have heard from other people online. Other people have been allowed ergo strips. Other people have been allowed like the self automatic stripping pliers. But I definitely say that if you've got stuff you like to use, like I'm a cropper man, so I always use croppers. So I took them, and that just made me feel a bit more comfortable than trying to go and use side cutters. You're not allowed to take your own screwdrivers, which I think is a bit of a shame because everyone has their own favourite screwdrivers. So you're talking what? You're talking like two that you'd have to take with you. I understand there would be an onus on the assessor to then check the condition and so on of the tools. But yeah, I've heard a lot of people say they have issues, and I think the message that people need to understand is if you've got a problem with the kit at AM2, you need to raise it with your assessor straight away, and they can stop the time while they go and get you a new terminal block or a new fuse spur or something. So if you're stripping stuff and the threads are knackered or something's knackered on it, and I think I had an issue with my fuse spur. It just was like refusing to take everything you need to get in there. Two cables in there. I could have asked for another one. I just kept sort of persevering to try and get it in. But yeah, absolutely. If there's a problem with the stuff on site, you've paid to be there. If it's affecting your performance, you need to say, "Excuse me, can you stop the time? I need to talk to you about this." And again, if you need guidance on what the spec is saying, that's something they should be able to explain to you. They can't tell you what to do, but they should be able to give you guidance on what the spec is asking for, really. But yeah, totally. Again, going back to what Craig says, learn the codes for your cables. But I think basically, if it ends with a 1, it's a single. If it ends with a 2, it's twin and earth. If it ends with a 3, it's 3-core. So it is a bit of a giveaway when you get in there and you start thinking, actually, that is quite straightforward. But yeah, learn the cable codes because you need them.
See, I fall completely out with that with the own tools. I don't think own tools should be allowed. I think it's a fairer assessment if it's the same across the board. Every NET centre has to provide equipment to a set standard. Yes, the equipment might get damaged, but they have to replace it immediately. As Matt said, they're not allowed to not replace that equipment for you, regardless of what it is, and they will stop your time to do so. And that includes if you think you've got a blunt set of snips or whatever, like you can get them to change them, and they will. The reason I fall out with the tools situation is I think it potentially puts your day on a negative start. So if you turn up and you feel confident, and I've got my trusty coppers and I've got my trusty set of screwdrivers and I've got this and I've got that, and you get there and for whatever reason, the insulation's battered or they're an old set or they don't meet the very strict set of guidelines as to what you are allowed to have your tools in, you basically need to have a brand new set of tools, which to me then defeats the point of having the comfort. Then I just don't see why you'd potentially start your day on a bad start by going, but now I don't have my favourite coppers, now I don't have my favourite set of screwdrivers, now I don't have my favourite this and I don't have my favourite that. It just immediately puts you into that downward spiral. So I actively always would advise people don't take your own tools because it stops you having that initial negative start to your day.
I guess it's a personal preference on that. I mean, if I was going for my AM2, I'd be turning up with a full pack out trolley and they can fight me out the door with the stuff I'm not going to use. In fact, when we came to LVU at Waltham Forest, Craig, we did bring a whole pack out stuff up to that classroom through the lift. So you can vouch for that being the truth. It's one of those, I think, and Nathan did, when he had his issue with the chop block, he didn't make the lecturer aware of that problem until he'd wasted about half an hour fighting with it. And to be fair, the assessor actually said, no, you should have made me aware of that and gave him the time back or whatever to sort out the problem that had developed through that, which is fine. But it is, again, just being aware, as you've said, Matt, if there is a problem with any of the kit you're using, be it a gland or a fuse spare or whatever, or the tools, let them know and that can be sorted out. You don't have to fight against that. It should be in working order. Again, I think most of the AM2 centres are pretty good with that, to be honest, from feedback that I've seen. I think they're quite strictly monitored by NET on that. But if there are problems there, then let them know. Is there any other sort of tips you'd have, Matt, for somebody who is preparing for that? Things that you found useful that maybe you didn't consider before you turned up to do it?
I think I think Craig's got a really valid point on make sure you've gone back over that net readiness checklist and you've been honest with yourself. And if there's anything on there that you're not 100% with. That's what you need to think about, read up on, practice. Again, I did a thing the other day somewhere online where I said, if you think about the price of your AM2, what is it now? It's about 1,200 quid for the version 1.1 and about 250 quid per section resit.
Pretty
Um,
much. Yeah.
how much is guidance note 3? How much is on-site guide? How much is two-way switches and an intermediate light switch and nick a bit of 2-core and 3-core from work? How much is that compared to having a Friday night at home, not out with your mates? Why are you buying the latest Milwaukee, whatever they've just brought out because your mate's got it, when, you could spend that on the excess training videos or a course from somewhere else or a refresher somewhere? Or, just buying yourself some bits to have a go at. We're talking about preparing for one day, or 3 days, sorry, that's supposed to be kind of the culmination of up to 4 years that you've been putting in, and people aren't making that effort. And it really is, badger your boss to buy you a copy of Guidance Note 3 or the on-site guide, or if you get into year 4, why have you not got your own copy already? Learn to use the index, learn to find the information yourself. They keep adding stuff into the online test. You've got building regs, so buy a copy of that, read up on it, find out what you need to know. The stuff in there that you need to know for work anyway. So why is it that people are getting to AM2 day and they've never opened 7671 or on-site guide or guide to building regs or guidance note 3? It's all in there, isn't it? All your verification is in guidance note 3. Start here, follow this, do that, job done.
There's all the digital variations
is
on that as well, isn't there, Matt? Where you can, is it the IET, I think, have their different packages. I think the CPSs do them as well. So if you don't want to fork out for all the books, I think you can pay for like an annual license, which gives you access to them, and PDFs are equivalent.
So and I think if you go to IET, there's a student membership, which then gets you about 25% off all the books as well.
Yeah.
So, it's something else for apprentices and students and people learning to think about, because then that gets you access to a discount on everything as well.
Yeah, 100%. If you can save a bit of money and get yourself well prepared, then why not? I think there is certain elements of self-responsibility in all that, and it's come through in what you've spoken about, Matt, that you've been proactive with a lot of what you're doing and not just waited for people to give it to you on a plate, basically, and got through out the other side, and you are now a qualified electrician. So it's like you made it, mate. It's like, and when you look at the stats, I think on a retrainee route, is there roughly speaking 60-70% don't make it through, I think, is the latest test data. And I don't know what the pass rate is on the AM2. Is it 30-40%, something like that, maybe lower? So the fact you're there is an achievement to be proud of, mate. So very, very well done to you. And did you get the gold card? Did you apply for it and get yourself?
I have.
I know the answer
because you've shared
I don't know where you want it already, but
I've got it. It took that. I think that out of the whole process is the most painful bit about what you've got to wait for and what you've got to prove to them and what you've got to send them and upload and everything just to be able to get a gold card.
You're lucky. You haven't had to do the joyous 50-question ECS health and safety test yet, because you get that free for the first time for your qualification.
I did that for my labourer's card. I did that for the labourer's card last year, so I have done it. And yeah, I'm grateful that I don't have to do that for 3 years with the health and safety modules. But I totally appreciate, there's a lot of people out there that knock the gold card and what it means and all the rest of it. And I think we've already mentioned the idea of it's very similar. AM2 is very similar to your driving test. And I totally understand that, now I have a qualification and a gold card. Now is when I'm starting to learn actually how to do the job properly. Because now your boss is like, that's on you now. Off you go, do it. So, yeah, I think if people aren't preparing for AM2, they've got to realise what the chances are their boss is going to ask them to do tomorrow. Because, effectively you are now qualified, so you should be able to go and do it. So, yeah, I think you should be able to do it before you get in there.
I mean, you must see that, Craig, in the business where you work, where people come out at the time, and I've seen this, and they want a pay increase to go up the pay band. But there's also the added responsibility for that, walking up the pay band, when you are qualified. And yeah, you do need that hand-holding period, I think, when you're fresh to industry, where you've still got mentors around you, but there is extra expectations that you can deliver on those qualifications, isn't there?
Yeah, and I think that goes both ways. It goes from what people think when they qualify versus what they are. To me, we used to call it time served, right? Finishing your apprenticeship is not when you're time served. Finishing your apprenticeship, in my opinion, is where you then are at the start of your journey to become time served, of being on your own, having to think about that problem, having to deal with that solution where maybe the help isn't as, like you say, as forthcoming as it maybe was. And that's when you start to get it. So yes, I know getting your gold card technically means you're qualified, but I think people should look at it as that's the start of your journey for your time served element. And I think ECS keep a bit of a structure like that, don't they? They say, well, you're a qualified electrician, and after 2 years you can become like an approved electrician, then you can become like a technician if you go and get your design and whatever else. And it's trying to keep a bit of that mantra, I think, of don't expect to walk out of your AM2 and think you're the same as somebody who's been kicking about for 10, 15, 20 years on site, because there's still a journey to go on. Whilst I'm not knocking that achievement, it's a huge, amazing achievement for everyone who goes through it. It's the expectation of, from employers, they're not the same as your 20-year spark at that point. And from newly qualified sparks, you're not the same as, it's kind of a double-edged sword, I think, isn't it? You're still in that learning journey, and just enjoy the journey with a little bit of extra responsibility and a little bit of extra pay, but just manage expectations, I guess, is all I would say, because you're not suddenly running the business by yourself or whatever. You're still probably, hopefully, going to be with somebody with a bit more experience and still being mentored, as you say, so that one day you are that 20-year spark with all that wealth of experience and knowledge.
Yeah, and I think that's a big bit of what gets missed out in industry at the minute, where there is a lot of people who go straight from training to having more responsibility than they maybe should. We certainly see that in the solar and the EV sector for sure. There's lots of people fresh out the time off on their own doing stuff that arguably maybe they shouldn't be doing, and that's something to wrestle with, I suppose, out in the wider industry of things. And there's a change. I was on the podcast with Sam, the electrician's podcast, where we spoke about changes in the quals that are coming and people who are having to do experienced worker assessments and NVQs. And we're going to have a podcast on this with 3 people who are affected in that way. They're electricians in their late 50s, early 60s. They've kept up to date with all of their sort of CPD, if you like, over the years. They've done like EV courses, solar courses, battery storage, got all the wiring regs up to date, 2391 and stuff. And because of the way solar and battery works, especially, you have to repeat those qualifications every 5 years. And they're finding now they can't enroll on them because they don't have the NVQ and stuff. And I'm trying to get to the bottom of if that's a miscommunication from the training providers and that their aged qualifications do still allow them access to it, or if that's the actual situation, because these people are on about now just jacking it in basically because, they don't want to go through that process. So I think that's another difficult element, wider question to what we've been speaking about tonight around the AM2 and the NVQ and such. And I do get the reason why industry wants to do that when we're looking at some of those who've been through short course training in particular, to kind of gather them together and give them some more training. But maybe it's a bit too wide reaching. I don't know if you had any views on that, if you'd seen any of them musings around that, either of you.
I haven't looked into the EES yet. It is on my list. I listened to yours and Sam's podcast, and I thought it was an interesting take. And I would like to think, because as I say, I've not read the document, I would like to think that industry wasn't being that blunt with it. I know we're trying to bring standards up. I know people need NVQs. I know people need AM2s. Is it going to be that black and white overnight? I would be surprised, because nothing in our industry has ever been that black and white overnight. Do I think there's an element of people need to do some upskilling? Yes. Do I think that people should lose their careers or businesses over it? Definitely not. And I think it might be a case of there's a sensible conversation to be had, probably on a case-by-case basis of, if you've got 20 years of experience, had the qualifications at the time that was relevant, maybe didn't do the NVQ, then maybe it is just an experienced worker NVQ And I know in the short term, that's probably going to seem like a bit of a ball ache or it's going to be an outlay, but most of your education would either potentially be covered by your employer or tax write offable, I would assume, as a non business owner. And therefore, would it actually really cost you any money, or is it just a bit of time? And whilst it's probably frustrating, I don't know that I fully fall out of love with there being an attempt to make the kind of one set standard, because I feel like for years we've all banged our heads saying we just want there to be one set standard, and then when they make an effort to potentially bring one set standard in, we then complain about the fact that they've done it. And I'm like, I'm not taking sides and not saying one right and one's wrong. I think there's wider conversations to be had, and I personally think a lot of the guys at NIC, NAPA, whoever, a lot of the higher up people that we talk to that are involved in these EAS documents, I think they would be open to a sensible conversation. And I think there would be things that can be done and support that can be out there. And yeah, I think it's at the minute, my worry is, are we having any knee jerk reactions to something where we've got a little bit of information and not all the fact? But I haven't personally dug into it yet, so I could be eating all my words on a podcast next week or whatever, saying that I completely got it wrong. I don't know.
No, I make you about right, to be fair, Craig. I don't think the industry would set out to have these people excluded from industry so bluntly. And they are trying to have that set standard. And we have all asked for that for a long, long time. And whilst it has felt the industry's worked against that through the era of the domestic installer courses and such, there is that effort there now, and we should support that. I guess the issue is when you go through those processes, there'll always be people who fall on the wrong side of that through circumstance. And it's, as you've just outlined, there needs to be a sensible approach to help those people. And there's lots of frustration there with those individuals who are affected that I also thoroughly understand and respect. So hopefully that, as time moves along, will get sorted out, and people aren't necessarily having to fork out thousands of pounds for their NVQs. And it's the time away from work as well to do stuff like that. And lots of them are self-employed people working on their own, just eking a living out of the job they do at the end of the day. So there's a bigger picture there, and it really isn't very easy. The hardest thing in the world is to cast a judgment on it and offer no solution to that problem. So one of the things I want to try and do is help some of those people who are in that circumstance, if that's through experience worker stuff we can do in our training centre or linking them up with others who can help them. I don't know, but there'll be something. And I know that the NIC, for example, help their own members out with paid support to do the experience worker assessment. I've had conversations with Paul Collins about exactly that. So there is stuff going on out there to try and help, and hopefully that comes through. Is there anything else you want to add, Matt, while you're here with us tonight?
So no, I just think it just go and check all of the documentation that's out there and make sure people are ready. AM2 is great. Actually, I really enjoyed it. I must say, it was 3 days. I stayed in a really crappy hotel in Liverpool, and
tell that to me already.
But yeah, it's really good, really, really good. Go and do it. Get stuck in. Practice. But then don't expect it to make you all of a sudden the best spark ever, because it doesn't.
I'm still trying to get to be half decent, and I've been at it over 20 years now. I might get there one day, you never know. So,
I gave up and went in the office.
Fair enough.
I'm on that journey, mate. I'm on that journey myself. So it's exciting when you do get through and out of the time, and you should be really proud of it. And anyone else who's on a similar journey to yourself, Matt, full credit to you all. And if there's any questions you've got around the conversation we've had tonight, do fire them in. And there's the Facebook group that I don't go in as often as I should, that I think Matt's still looking after. It's been a while since I've checked into it, so you'll find him in there as well if you've got any questions for him. Is there anything else that you want to add, Craig, while we're on the pod?
Not so much about the AM2, but do you want to say about what should happen after next Tuesday?
Oh, that's a good idea, isn't it? I totally forgot. We did mention that at the start of the podcast. So Craig is coming up to us in Driffield next Tuesday, because we've got our good friends from EAL coming to assess us, our best friends. We love EAL. No bribes given. In been nice to them on the podcast, honestly. But yeah, that's bringing me a few sleepless nights. I will be honest, and I'm glad you're coming, mate, to help with that because it's something I've never been through before. We're talking about AM2 assessments. We're having a training centre assessment, so we'll see how that plays out.
But I think it's credit to you and what you've done and the hard work coming to a culmination because technically when we get up on Wednesday morning, Apprentice 121 will formally be a recognised training centre. So congratulations on all your hard work and what you've put in, mate. It'll be, I know you've put some posts on LinkedIn, and sort of taking stock of it, but come Wednesday morning and the fantastic plans you guys have got and some of the industry bodies that are helping and the sort of manufacturers and stuff who are supporting this journey is hopefully meaning we're going to be able to do something pretty good for sort of trying to give back to industry. And it's a gold card, I guess. It's the end of one part of the journey and the start of learning how to be a training centre to give that bit back come the next morning, and we'll work through. But I think all fair play and credit to you for getting it to that point. And for those who don't know, we'll update after Wednesday what courses we got approved for. But currently we have gone for the suite of apprenticeships, NVQs, experienced workers, design, regs, test inspection courses. So we are trying to help with areas where people do need some support, and Mark will be far better place to talk about, and probably not on this podcast, but how that help works and how that helps people and what that does. But yeah, fair play to you, mate, and well done. I'm looking forward to Tuesday, and I'm looking forward to Wednesday morning when you wake up and you're kind of officially trading, so to speak. So
yeah, and we've got our open day on the Wednesday as well. So we've got lots of people hopefully turning up just to have a look around and celebrate with us, which will be nice. And I thank you for the help you've been giving with all this, Craig, because you're the one who's squirreled away doing the work with EAL. I wouldn't know where to start, to be fair. So massively grateful for you with that. And yeah, the idea is as we kind of move along that maybe bursary is the wrong sort of description, but we are planning on funding elements of what we're going to deliver through our partnerships with some of the brands we're lucky enough to be able to work with. So there's going to be things along those lines, as well as selling proper training courses to those who want to come and pay and train alongside us, but utilising any of the profits, if you like, from that payment to help other people who maybe can't. So that's kind of the community vibe behind it we're doing. It's not going to make any money. Anything we do manage to generate, we'll pump straight back into training. And we'll see where that takes us. It's an exciting journey and one I'm looking forward to. And at some point, Matt, we'll have to get you up here for a look around as well.
I keep promising to come up, but yeah, totally. Absolutely.
And, yeah, sorry, go
on. I'm massively looking forward to next Wednesday to hearing the good news that you've got all of your courses and you're up and running with the Apprentice 121 Academy. And I'll definitely be up to either come and do some training with you, sit on one of your courses, or help out with anything that I can do. Just let me know. Yeah, more than happy to get stuck in with anything.
Thank you very much. Massively appreciate that. And yeah, hopefully we get through it. I will report back on the next podcast. We're going to be back again. As I said, I'm going to try and twist Nathan's arm to come and have a chat with us. I'll probably get nowhere, but I will try. And we've got the 3 people who have been affected, as I just mentioned, around this change to training. But we're not going to do that until I've got the actual proper answer in their circumstance, because I still think it might be training companies who've got the wrong end of the stick with some of this and haven't given the best advice to them. But we'll see how that plays out. Otherwise, thank you both for joining me on this chat. I've really enjoyed it. It's been great to get the podcast up and running again and speak with you 2 legends. And if you've got any questions, having listened to or watched this, as always, do drop them in. If there's topics you want us to cover in a bit more detail or totally separate to anything we've discussed about tonight, please do drop them in as well and let us know. And otherwise, we'll be back on the next one.
Cheers all. Bye-bye.
Cheers.